Good evening, everyone, and welcome into our Rules of Golf webinar series. My name is Caleb McCall, and I'm part of the competitions team here at the VSGA. And we're also joined by Josh Coates, who is going to be leading our presentation today, and he is our Senior Director of Golf Operations and Development. This is the second week of our virtual series here. So if this is your first session, welcome in. If you were here last week, welcome back. We're glad to have you here this evening. You should have received all the outline of the topics that we will discuss throughout the 3 weeks. So you should have that at your disposal. Just a reminder for future weeks or next week. We do offer two sessions at 12 o'clock and at 6 p.m. So feel free to just join one of those. You don't need to join both of them, but you're more than welcome to if you would like. If you have missed a week, we are posting all of our presentations on our website, vsga.org. So if you go there and you navigate to our resource center, there's a rule section there, and from there you can see all of our resources as well as the presentations for each week in a PDF version, so you can access that. This evening throughout the presentation, feel free to use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. We do want this to be an interactive session, so we want to try to get to as many questions as we can. We will have question breaks throughout the presentation where I will answer as many questions as we can. If I do not get to your question, if we need to move on, I will reach out to you via email to make sure you do get those answers. Also, there is a feature at the bottom that says show captions. I think that might be an option for some people if you're having a hard time hearing the audio. That could be a good option for you or a good solution there. And then for our PGA members in attendance tonight, we do want to make sure you get your credits. So go ahead in the Q&A or in the chat, go ahead and put your PGA number and we will make sure you get those credits. With that being said, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Josh and he'll get us started tonight.
Excellent. Thanks, Caleb, and welcome everybody to the evening session for week two. For those that joined last week, you heard Kent kind of get us going into forms of play, parts of the golf course, kind of explaining a few of the ins and outs of the rules of golf book, how to get in and out, how to ask questions, how to answer questions, and best practices there, as well as getting into one of our core or principal rules and Rule 8 about playing the course as you find it. Now we're going to get into some scenarios where we can't play the course as we find it. Things happen throughout the round of golf. As you all know, we don't hit every fairway, hit every green in one or two putt as we would hope. So things happen along the way, and we're going to dig into how to get out of certain situations and hopefully teach you a few tips and tricks on how you can use the rules to your advantage for those that do know them, which is why you're all here today. And again, we do appreciate it. We'll go ahead and jump into the agenda for this evening. We're going to cover Rule 7, so finding and identifying the golf ball, some things that you're permitted to do, some things to be cautious about. In Rule 7, the ball plays it lies in Rule 9, but specifically what happens when a ball at rest is lifted or moved. So again, getting into some of those situations where we don't play the ball as it lies, or we don't play the course exactly how we find our ball because something has happened, and how to get out of that. Rule 11, ball in motion deflected. Certain things can happen either by accident or on purpose, deliberate actions, and we'll get into some of those scenarios and whether or not penalties do apply. And then finally, ball handling in Rule 14, which will really set the stage and get you ready for the third and final week with Amanda and our relief scenarios. When you have the ball in your hand, how to get it back in play, and where and when penalties may or may not apply. So let's go ahead and jump into Rule 7, finding and identifying the golf ball. And we'll lead off with how to fairly search for your golf ball if needed. So again, don't hit every fairway as we'd hoped. So things go offline from time to time, and if you can't find your ball, but are searching for it, the rules obviously cover this and will allow a lot more than it used to. So anything that is considered fair or reasonable is going to be permitted when you're searching for your ball. So in a scenario where you're in an area where your ball is most likely to be, you don't see it. If it's in tall grass and bushes, etc., the rules are going to be a lot more permissive when you can do certain things. And if your ball happens to move while doing these things in a search, we'll find out if there's a penalty involved later on. But the second bullet point on the screen is really the most likely scenario: moving or bending grass, bushes, tree branches, and other growing or attached natural objects. While searching, we'll get into what we mean by the word while, but those are going to be permitted if it's during search. So you haven't found your ball, there's no ball in sight, you're allowed to do what is necessary, fair and reasonable to find that golf ball. And I will highlight or mention a clarification. So for those that have the big rules of golf book that has all the clarifications, or those that use the app or the online versions, clarification 7.1a/1 provides some examples of actions that are unlikely to be fair. So, or some scenarios where there would be a penalty involved or could be because they are excessive or not likely to be fair or reasonable. One of the examples, or a couple, are purposely removing growing things or breaking branches, for example, when it's not necessary. So if you're just removing every growing thing in sight on the path to find that ball while searching, that is not reasonable or fair, because if you do happen to find your ball, it could improve one of our areas covered in Rule 8, the conditions affecting the stroke. And then another example, if you are going into an area that you have to maybe duck under a branch or two to get to that area, just breaking off that branch when it's not necessary, you can simply just move it out of the way, it goes right back, or duck under it. It's not deemed necessary or reasonable. So that'd be a scenario where there could be a penalty involved. So do what you have to do to get to a certain area to find the ball, uncover it, and if a ball moves, we'll find out what happens next. But don't do anything that's unreasonable or will not be considered a fair search. So Kent did a nice job covering Rule 8 and highlighted the conditions affecting the stroke. If you remember, this is one of our exceptions or things that is permitted. So if you are searching for your ball, so the example in the top right, and that ball is in deep grass, there will be a need to remove or move some of that just to see the ball or just to identify it. In doing so, it's obvious that, yes, our conditions affecting the stroke, the lie of that ball, area of intended swing is going to be improved. But because it's during a fair search, we're not going to be penalized under Rule 8. If once we find the ball and we know it's ours, if you continue to remove that grass or move it or get it out of the way to where it further improves your area of intended swing, lie, or stance, then now we have a penalty situation involved potentially. So again, if it's during the search, certain things are permitted. But once you find the golf ball, things reset and we go back to applying Rule 8. And if there's an improvement that's been made, we will likely incur a penalty there. So it says general penalty. Whenever you see the phrase general penalty, that means in match play, that's an immediate loss of hole. And in stroke play, that's going to be a 2-stroke penalty added to that hole. The last part of this slide, the player may also remove loose impediments and movable obstructions. Those are two things covered by separate rules. So you are permitted to remove loose impediments under that rule and movable obstructions, which would be, tied into Rule 7, but separate, and you are allowed to remove those and apply those rules as well. So now we've searched for our ball. Now we need to identify it. So a different example here, not anywhere in Virginia, but somewhere out in the desert where we do have a ball and a cactus here. So if I've hit my ball and it went into this area, and there happened to be a spectator or someone that said, "Hey, Josh, I saw the flight of the ball. I heard it. It impacted right here. That is definitely your ball, even if I can't tell whether it is or it isn't. It is ultimately my responsibility, but I can use all of the information that is available, including from that spectator in this case, to proceed with that ball. I'm not likely to be able to play it, so I may have to use the unplayable ball rule, which that'll be covered in next week's presentation under relief. But I can proceed with that fact being known. Now, if nobody was around and I see the ball in the cactus and I happen to see my identifying mark, so I use a blue dot or a blue circle. That's my choice of identifying mark, and I could tell, okay, that's clearly mine. I could tell it's a Titleist. I could tell it's got my blue mark on it. That's another way. Obviously, that's why we do it, and putting those marks on the balls to identify it as ours. But different scenario. Let's just say that you hit a ball into an area. There's no other balls in sight. It's not, not no deep rough. It's, if there were a ball around, you would clearly see it. You do find a ball. It's the same brand, model, number, and condition as the one that you're playing. You can proceed as your as your ball. The last part, if identical ball is found in the same area and there's no way to know which ball is belongs to either you as the player or someone else on or off the golf course that's on the playing in the tournament or that round, then unfortunately those balls are both lost and we're proceeding under stroke and distance. So an example is that we give all the time is Caleb and I are on the first tee of in a tournament. Both of us hit the ball right down the middle of the fairway. And we walk up to our balls. They're lying side by side. I look at Caleb and say I'm playing a red number Titleist Pro V1 number one. He says, well, I'm playing the same exact ball. It's a red numbered one Titleist Pro V1. Both only been hit one time, so we can't tell which ball is which, even though they're lying right in the middle of the fairway in prime position. We can't tell which ball is from each other. So now, unfortunately, both of us are going back to the tee under stroke and distance simply because we can't identify which ball is which. So the rules say you should put an identifying mark on your ball. Anytime you see the word should, that's a recommendation. I would say it's a strong recommendation, something that definitely to follow. Different than a must. If the rules say we must put an identifying mark on our ball, it's a whole different scenario. But whenever you see the word should, that's a recommendation, and I would take it pretty seriously there because it could help you down the road, especially in this situation. If we do need to lift the ball to identify it, so we find a ball anywhere and we are permitted to mark it and lift it, and in this case, I'll go back to my blue mark and find my blue mark and maybe lying on the underside of that ball to where I can't see it. There is a procedure that must be followed. You must mark the ball first. If you don't follow that procedure, then there will be a one penalty stroke. And this slide outlines the entire procedure. So if you don't mark the ball, if you lift the ball when it's not necessary, so if I can clearly see that that's my ball, my blue mark is right on top, there's no reason for me to lift that ball. In this case, I'm not taking relief. Then I am going to incur a penalty of one stroke under this procedure. And also, if I clean it when I'm not allowed, and this is a case where I cannot clean it. So if you're lifting your ball to identify it, you cannot clean it. The exception there is if it's completely covered by mud, and I think it's my ball, but I need to be able to wipe off a little bit of it to see my blue mark. I am permitted to do that only until I see that mark, and then I can't clean it any longer. And that's one of our 4 times that we have our ball in our hand and we cannot clean it fully. And we'll see that in a later slide of all 4 of those. I mentioned this earlier about accidentally moving it, and also the word while. So I underlined that and bolded it because there are definitions in the rules of golf. Strongly encourage everybody to start by reading those definitions. It's really going to get you on a great path to understanding the rules. It's going to answer a lot of questions that you may already have just by reading those definitions. There are some subtle internal definitions, and this is one of them. The word while is actually in a clarification that it says that there is a start and an end time to a search in this case. It's not open ended. We do have to define a start and an end, so where um, if we move a ball, we have to know if we're in that period of time to where there is no penalty. So if I hit a ball 250 yards down the hole and I am walking 175 yards away, I'm just walking towards the spot that I think my ball is, and I happen to kick my ball because it hit a tree without me knowing it. Well, I'm not in that period of time of while searching because I haven't actually started the search. I'm just walking to where I think it is. So unfortunately, I would get a penalty in that case. But if I am in that period of time, so I'm 250 yards away from the hole and it is around that area and I'm searching in the tall grass in this scenario, and I do move my ball because it is during a fair search or while searching, I would not get penalized and I would simply just put that ball back on the original spot without any penalty. Caleb, any questions early on?
Yeah, someone asked if you are searching for your ball in a fair and reasonable search and you accidentally move it, um, do you have to put it back to its original position? And the answer to that is yes, you do need to put it back to the original position or as close as you possibly can. And that's it so far.
Excellent. Yeah, feel free, everybody, to put some questions into the Q&A. Even if they don't relate to this presentation, like Caleb said, we'll be happy to get back to you at the appropriate time. It might be answered next week, or if not, we'll be happy to email or reply to you. And always, as always, you can contact us at any time through our website or via call in the office too. Glad to help out at any point during the season. So let's jump into Rule 9. So ball at rest moved or lifted. That's the part that we are going to focus on right now. We all know that we need to play the ball as it lies, but things happen if we can't. This is one of those where we may not be playing the ball as it lies because we know that it's been moved. But before we get into the meat of the rule, this is a defined term of what we actually mean by a ball that has been moved. And this is another scenario, much like improve that you heard about last week, that the definition of move in Webster's version and the rules of golf version are going to differ because in the rules of golf, the ball actually has to change its location, whether it's up, down, or horizontally, or any direction from where it was originally at rest. So it actually has to move and stay in a different place. If the ball wobbles, or even if it rolls over, a full turn, and then somehow comes all the way back to the same exact spot, by the definition in the rules of golf, that ball has not moved because it is still at rest on the same exact spot where it originally came to rest, which is different than the Webster's version, different than what you may have seen on TV over the weekend at Pebble Beach. They zoomed in close of the last hole. It was so windy on the 18th green that the ball was, you could tell it was moving, it was wobbling or oscillating, but it would meet Webster's criteria or definition, but not the rules of golf. That player ended up leaving it as is and holing that putt. But you could obviously tell it was moving, it was wobbling, but the rules of golf say that it actually hasn't because it hasn't left its original spot. Now, if we're uncertain whether the ball has moved, we're going to apply the known or virtually certain standard to this. You're going to see this in a few different cases, one tonight, and then again, certainly when we're talking about penalty areas. So that's why that picture is in the bottom right. Well, that's probably most commonly where it's used in the rules, and also when we're giving rulings out on the golf course. This standard of 95%. So the first one is there's evidence somebody saw the ball move or saw the ball go into the penalty area and knows that it went in there. There's, even though you can't find it in the penalty area or you didn't actually see it for yourself, the evidence is there that it actually did move in this case. staying in Rule 9. So we know that it moved. If there is any doubt, we are going to use the 95% standard of we don't know for sure. Nobody actually saw it, but there's circumstantial evidence all around that gives us a 95% degree of confidence that it did move. So we are going to apply Rule 9 and take further action as to what to do. So now we do know that the ball moved. We are virtually certain. We do have that 95% or more certainty. So now we're going to decide what caused it to move, and then what do we do afterwards. So there's four possible causes, and only these four are addressed in the rules. So we have to apply one of these four. The first one, natural forces, wind, water, gravity, the player's caddy, partner, or partner's caddy. So that player's side, that's addressed in its own section. The opponent, same thing. The opponent's caddy is grouped in there as their side. And then it says another player in stroke play, an animal, a spectator, but really that last part is key. It's anything else. So it's not, if it's not natural forces, the player or the opponent, then we're going to go right to the fourth one, outside influence, and apply that one. So we'll go through step by step. So if it is more moved by natural forces, so wind, gravity, etc., there's no penalty. We're going to play the ball from its new spot most of the time. There are two exceptions. You're going to hear this a lot. We have rules and exceptions all throughout the rules of golf, and this is no different. So our two exceptions for this rule being natural forces. The ball's on the putting green, and it moves after having been lifted and replaced. So an example here is my ball is at rest on a slope. I did come to rest. I walk up to it, mark it, lift it, replace it, and then the ball moves away, either closer to the hole or further away from the hole. But because under this exception, I marked it, lifted it, and replaced it, now my ball is going to own that spot. I own that spot for that next stroke. And so no matter what, I'm going to play from that spot, or if I can't get it to come back to rest at a spot very close by. So even if it rolls some distance away, because I've taken that action, I am going to play from that spot. This is one of those cases I mentioned earlier that you can use the rule to your advantage. So in that scenario, if my ball is at rest on a slope and that slope is aimed towards the hole, I cannot unduly delay play. I cannot do anything to physically cause it to move, but maybe I can, take a few extra seconds before I decide to mark it, because if it happens to move on its own, because I haven't marked it and lifted it, and the ball rolls closer to the hole or even in the hole, well, now it's my lucky day, and I get to reap the benefits of that situation. On the other hand, if the ball's on a slope and that slope is going away from the hole, or even worse, towards a bunker or penalty area, now I have incentive to race up there as quick as I can, mark the ball, lift it, because I know once I have done that, my ball owns that spot, and I'm going to play from that spot, even if I put it back and then it then rolls into the penalty area or away from the hole. So that's a way you can use it to your advantage in this scenario. The second part of this is a newer addition. If the ball at rest moves to another area of the course after being drop placed or replaced. So if you remember a few years back, there was a scenario with Ricky Fowler where he was around the putting green. He had hit it into a penalty area, and he had already taken relief. He had dropped the ball. The ball was at rest. He walked up to the putting green as he was getting ready to play that pitch shot. And before he could play it, the ball took off and rolled back down the slope and back into the penalty area. So he had already paid one penalty stroke for that first drop. Because the ball rolled back into the penalty area and this exception wasn't in play, now he's going to have to apply Rule 17 again. That's his only option. Another penalty stroke. So that's two total. Drop it again and then finally play. But now with this exception in place, he would just simply replace the ball back on that spot because it changed the part of the core, the area of the course. So keep in mind, in that same scenario, if he dropped the ball, one penalty stroke, it was at rest. Let's just say it moved, a couple feet or a couple club lengths even, but not into the penalty area. So it stayed in the general area. He would play that ball from its new spot, because then we're going to go back to the natural forces and play it from its new spot, because it didn't change areas of the course or go out of bounds in that scenario. So it's only to apply this one, it's only when it actually changes the area of the golf course to another one. Next, if the player causes it to move, it's going to mean a penalty of 1 stroke and must replace the ball on its original spot. But we've got 5 exceptions here. If the player was allowed to move the ball, so if my ball's on a cart path, I am permitted to pick that ball up and take relief. Obviously, not going to get a penalty in that scenario. Accidental movement while trying to find or identify the ball. We just covered that in Rule 7. Accidental movement on the putting green. And this is one of those rules that you read and interpret very literally. So if your ball's on the putting green and it was moved accidentally, it doesn't matter by who or by what, you're just going to simply put that back. You could drop your club on the ball. You could accidentally kick it. You could accidentally move it while removing your coin. If it was an accident and your ball was on the putting green, there's no penalty, and you're simply just going to replace that ball and move on. Accidental movement anywhere except on the putting green while applying the rule. So going back to my cart path scenario, let's just say my ball is on the cart path and I'm trying to measure my nearest point of complete relief. Because I'm trying to apply the rule, I'm trying to do the right thing while measuring to find my nearest point of relief. The rules are not going to penalize me in that scenario if I am applying a rule in that case. And then lastly, this doesn't happen very often, but if the ball moves after coming to rest against a player or equipment, that's sometimes one that we can't avoid or hard to avoid. So the rule is going to say that we are not going to get penalized, and we're simply going to put that ball back. Next, the opponent. If my opponent, so Caleb and I are playing a match. In this case, anytime you see the word opponent, we know that we're not in stroke play. We are in match play. My opponent receives a 1-stroke penalty and I must replace the ball, or actually, in this case, Caleb could replace the ball because he's the one that moved it. So let's just say we're both walking down the fairway and for whatever reason, he kicks my ball, even if it's by accident. In that case, we're not searching for it. In this scenario, he would get a 1-stroke penalty, and either he or I must replace that ball. There are 3 exceptions in this part of the rule. If the opponent was allowed to lift or move the ball, such as he's conceding a stroke to me, he's allowed to pick that ball up after that stroke has been conceded. If he accidentally marks and lifts my ball on the putting green, my mistake, that can be considered going back to our accidental movement on the putting green. Anything's an accident on the putting green, we're going to let that go and just replace the ball. And then again, the same exceptions as the player. So anything that the player would have for them as an exception, the opponent would be too. Example here that we'll give is when searching. The rules aren't going to penalize an opponent for doing the right thing and search for a ball. So Caleb's helping me search for my ball in the trees. The rules aren't going to turn around and say you're penalized if he happens to kick it and move it in that case. So that's another scenario where he or my opponent would not get any penalty there. And then lastly, outside influence, pretty straightforward here. Remember, that's that anything or anybody. If it's not one of the first 3, it's anything else. There's no penalty in this case because there's not anybody to penalize, and we must replace the ball on its original spot. So example here could be what you see on TV from time to time. Player hits a ball into the gallery. Ball is at rest. Young fan sees a golf ball, says, "Oh, it's my lucky day. I get a souvenir," picks the ball up. Well, unfortunately, you can't have that ball as a souvenir. We've got to put it back. Not going to penalize that young fan. And a lot of times they get a signed glove or anything out of it, but they must replace the ball because they were the ones that move it, or the player could as well. Caleb, any questions?
Yes, we have a few good questions. One question about 4-ball. When does the 3-minute clock start when you are searching for your ball? And that would be when yourself or your partner, or if there's a caddy, your caddy, that would be when the 3 minute search would start. And then another question is if the ball moves while you're standing over the ball, getting ready to swing, is this a one-stroke penalty? And the answer to that is yes. If you accidentally move your ball while you are, in the fairway and you accidentally hit the ball by accident, that is a one-stroke penalty, and you would need to replace that ball back to its original spot. You don't want to play that ball that you accidentally hit from that next position because then you'd be playing from the wrong place. And then I think there's one more. If a ball held on the slope of a bunker by a rake is then moved and then rolls to the bottom of the bunker, what do you need to do? In that case, you would need to place the ball back to its original spot. So if it's on a slope, you're most likely not going to be able to get it to stay. So you need to get to the nearest close or the nearest spot as possible, and then place that original ball there. And I think that's it.
All right, we'll jump into Rule 11 now, which is a little less straightforward than Rule 9 for those that have read Rule 11. I'm speaking for myself, maybe, and probably a few others that it can be a little bit confusing, or actually a lot confusing, at least in my case. So this is one time that we are going to try to put things in layman's terms. So here's our three parts of the rule, and this is not how it's listed in the rules of golf, but we're just going to try to put this in layman's terms as best as we can. Rule 11.1, we're dealing with accidents and accidents only. They happen. And most times we're going to let players off the hook for those accidents. We'll get into that in just a second. 11.2 and 3, we're talking about deliberate actions. So just keep that in mind when you are going through those. Rule 11.1 is accidental things only. 11.2, we're talking about people that are purposefully doing things, whether they putting them in the way, taking things out to affect a ball that is in motion, and what are we going to do in that scenario. So just a couple slides in Rule 11.1. It is one that I have to read a few times to fully grasp, but I think this slide really does a good job of summarizing it and putting it in layman's terms instead of having to read through all the exceptions or even an exception to an exception in this case. So we'll just go through it. The first part, if the ball is played from off the putting green and the ball is deflected, there's no penalty. We're going to play the ball as it lies. Again, this is an accident. It hits off something, could be anything. I played from off the putting green. We're going to play it as it lies. Our exceptions there are if it happened to come to rest in something such as a golf cart or a maintenance cart, or in this case, the bottom right there, we have a ball that's in motion. A dog runs out and picks it up. What are we going to do? We're not going to, play the ball as it lies in that case. And in the example of the golf cart, this does happen from time to time, and even in our own events, we're going to take relief from where it first came to rest in that golf cart, even if the cart drives away some distance. It's where it first came to rest in it, and that relief area starts with our reference point right under where the ball came to rest, and then we get one club length no closer to the hole to drop that ball in. So, and that kind of quickly summarizes if we play it from off the putting green and it does get deflected, no penalty. Play the ball as it lies with those couple of exceptions there. If it's played from on the putting green, things get a little more complicated. There's no penalty with one exception, which we'll get to in just a second. And the first list on the left is when we're going to play the ball as it lies, which is in most scenarios. If it hits a loose impediment, whether that loose impediment is moving or not, so we hit a ball, our putt in this case, and a leaf blows across the green, and the ball strikes it, or it strikes the ball and happens to deflect it, where we're going to play the ball as it lies. Also, an animal defined as a loose impediment, a worm or an insect, so it doesn't include this dog here. on our screen. It's one that is defined as a loose impediment. A couple that are a little bit surprising the first time you read it is if it hits you, the player, or the player's club used to make the stroke. So that left picture there. So very short putt, and the ball horseshoes around and happens to either hit our foot or the club. In that case, we're not going to get penalized for that because that would be hard to avoid. In that scenario, again, it was by accident. Keep that in mind. It wasn't deliberate. If it was deliberate, changes the whole fact set, and we're going to apply a different rule. But we're going to play the ball as it lies, including if it happened to be deflected and go into the hole as well. And then last, the flag stick or the flag stick attendant, the rules allow for us to have the flag attended. And by accident, if we happen to strike the person attending the flag stick, or let's just say the flag stick attendant cannot get the flag out of the hole and it strikes the flag stick, then we're not going to get penalized as well. The last one, ball marker, pretty self-explanatory. That happens from time to time. Ball rolling over one of our fellow competitors or opponents' ball marker. So left-hand side, we're going to play the ball as it lies. The right-hand side, these do not happen very often at all. But again, we're on the putting green. We strike a putt, and here comes that dog again. Dog runs out and takes our ball. We're going to cancel and replay that stroke. If it hits another person, so someone else other than the player themselves or the person attending the flag stick, we're going to cancel and replay, or some other movable obstruction, including another ball in motion. But again, these things don't happen too often, but those are cases where we're going to cancel and replay the stroke if they do in fact happen. So our exception there that I mentioned, if in stroke play, so that's underlined there. So in match play, this doesn't apply, but in stroke play, if the player's ball in motion strikes another ball at rest on the putting green, and both balls were on the putting green before that stroke, the player that made that stroke or hit that putt is going to get penalized 2 strokes. The reason why it's in stroke play only is because we're trying to protect an entire field of potentially lots of people or players. So if a ball is behind the hole, let's say, and a player thinking to themselves, well, if I'm going to go ahead and make that stroke, if it happens to go by the hole, then it'll hit off that ball and it'll serve as a little backstop. That's not going to be permitted in stroke play. We need to protect the entire field, and match play is a little bit different. If it's in Caleb and I playing a match, it's only me versus him. It's up to him to kind of protect himself in our match. So if he says, hey, Josh, I'm going to mark that ball, I want to mark that ball, I'm going to, because it's going to potentially help your play or assist you. I have to let him do that. If I don't, there could be a penalty for me. So that's the difference between stroke play and match play in this case. All right, rule 11.2. So totally switching gears from things that are accidents to now we have deliberate actions, in this case, putting things in the way. So first, we have to know that there was intent to deliberately deflect or stop the ball by the person, whether they put their equipment or other object or even themselves in the way, and that it was purposefully or deliberately positioned there, and it did actually cause that ball to be deflected. So the ball actually did hit that object. Again, these things don't happen very often, but if they do, now we know what to do. And the player gets the general penalty. It's whether that player is doing something to his own ball. So, the ball is going somewhere and comes back towards that, or the player's in a position to deflect it or put something down. That player themselves are going to get that penalty. If it was by an opponent or another player in stroke play, they are going to get that penalty. So if Caleb does something to affect put something down to affect my ball, and the ball does in fact hit that object, he's going to get the penalty. And that's really where it's covered in this last part. So 2 parts here. So one, you have to have the intent. So in this case, Caleb had the intent. He wanted to deflect my ball. And then the second part is my ball actually has to hit that object or hit him or whatever he aimed to do to purposefully deflect that ball. So a little bit different than 11.3, but I want to stress that in this case, if you're putting things in the way, you have to have the intent and the ball must actually hit that object in order for there to be a penalty. So in this case, that's another general penalty, so pretty harsh one. In match play, Caleb's going to lose the hole immediately, and in stroke play, he would add 2 strokes to his score for that hole. So still in 11.2, so we do have a ball that's been purposefully deflected. So now where are we going to play from? This is going to take a little bit of work on our end if we're making that ruling or if there's nobody around the player's end, because now we're going to have to estimate where the ball would have likely come to a rest had it not been deflected. So that's going to be subject to some interpretation, because it could have gone in the fairway, could have gone in the rough, could have gone into a penalty area, or even worse, it could have been on its way out of bounds. And then in that case, the player is going to take stroke and distance. But a lot of factors would go into play in determining what the outcome would be. But if it was determined that it was purposefully deflected, we are going to have to estimate if the ball was played from off the putting green. If it was played from on the putting green, that's a little more simple. There's still going to be a potential penalty if it was done by a player in the competition, but we're just going to cancel and replay that stroke. That was one of our times, even in Rule 11.1, where if it was deflected by another person, we're going to cancel and replay. Now 11.3, deliberately taking things out of the way. This is a situation where we have seen this in our tournaments from time to time. So in the example here in the picture, so player makes that pitch shot and doesn't quite get it all the way up to the green or to the hole, and the ball is slowly on its way back toward that player's feet. And in this case, the player is moving loose impediments or replacing divots to where it would affect the conditions affecting the stroke. So that was an 8.1 rule that was covered. Or if it was just simply moving a loose impediment or movable obstruction, and it could have affected where that ball would have come to rest immediately, that player is going to get penalized. So different standard here. So right when the player does this action, they are going to get penalized. It doesn't actually have to affect. So different standard there. Before, when we are putting things in the way, the ball has to actually hit that object. If we are taking things out of the way, right when we remove that object or that thing, in quotes, it is going to be a penalty immediately. Some exceptions where the player would not receive the penalty. There are certain things that are kind of grandfathered in, such as a removed flag stick. So we're on the putting green. Someone takes out the flag stick, removes it, puts it on the green behind the hole some distance. I hit my putt. It goes a little bit too hard, and Caleb runs over, picks up that removed flag stick. That's one of the cases that's covered here. If it happens to hit a ball at rest on the putting green, or I'm sorry, if we lift the ball at rest on the putting green, if Caleb's ball is on the putting green and he sees my ball approaching it in stroke play, he's actually going to save me 2 strokes along the way. So thanks to Caleb for that. That's one of our cases where there's no penalty to anybody. And then also equipment belonging to any player. That's going to be another item that's covered under this exception to where there's not going to be a penalty to any player. All right. Hopefully that was a good summary of Rule 11. But Caleb, any questions?
No questions for this section.
All right. Well, we'll jump right into our last rule of the day, which is Rule 14. And this is really going to set the stage for next week, because in all of the situations we take relief, we are going to have the ball in our hand. And whether we are dropping it, placing it, or replacing it, Rule 14 is going to have us covered here. So first, how to mark a ball. We have talked about that a few times in this presentation. So if you are marking the ball or wanting to mark the ball, just know that the only time you're actually required to mark a ball is when the ball has to be replaced. So I talked about lifting it for identification. Well, That's a scenario where the ball is going to have to be replaced, so I have to mark it. And I went over the procedural penalty. If I don't mark it, that's a one-stroke penalty. No difference here in this slide. But if the ball doesn't have to be replaced, you don't actually have to mark it. So I use the car path example a lot so far. I can keep using that one. So my ball's on the car path, and I just pick the ball up because I'm going to take relief. Well, now the ball is not going to be replaced on that original spot, so the rules aren't going to require me to mark it. It's always a good idea to mark it at all times because it's good to have that reference point or that spot to know. So if I lift the ball on the car path and I did put a mark down beforehand, now I do know if I haven't measured my nearest point of relief, I'm going to know where to start from there. So it's always a good idea to do it. And then going back to our procedure here, if you lift the ball without marking it when you're required to, if you mark it in a wrong way, in these scenarios here, if the coin is too far away, it has to be right next to the ball, or if I mark it using an object that's not permitted, we'll see that in a second. All of these are going to be a one-stroke penalty. And if you do mark the ball, say on the putting green, and when you put the ball back, you do have to lift that marker. If you don't, that's included in our procedure here to where we would get a one penalty of one stroke if we make that stroke with the ball marker left in place. So how do we mark the ball? Another definition here. It's got to be either right behind, right next to, or you can actually hold your club on the ground right next to the ball. That is permitted. Just be careful not to move it. And it's got to show where the ball has to be replaced. So the idea of all of this is that we have to get the ball in the exact same spot after we've lifted it when we're required to replace it. Another definition here, what is a ball marker? Where it can be used. Highlighted artificial object. That was a change several years ago. It's got to be an artificial object, commonly a tee, divot repair tool, coin, our club, all artificial objects, and can be used. It cannot be anything that's already there. So let's say there's a blemish or a ball mark from the impact of the ball on the putting green. You can't use something that's already there. You can't use a natural object such as a leaf or blade of grass or something like that. It's got to be an artificial object. Who may lift a ball? This is specific here to the player or the player's partner. So if you're playing partners golf, there's a lot of things that your partner can do for you, including lifting your ball. You can also authorize someone to lift a ball in certain scenarios, but you have to authorize that person each time. So I can't on the first tee. Caleb's going to be walking around watching me play golf. And I can't say, hey, anytime I'm going to lift the ball, I authorize Caleb to do it. He's permitted to do it. That's not going to work. I have to authorize him to do it each time. The exception is if Caleb is my caddy in this different scenario, he's always permitted to mark and lift my ball on the putting green. So the putting green, as Kent went over, there's many more permissions on the putting green than any other areas in the golf course, and this one is no different. If the ball's on the putting green, my caddy can mark and lift it at any time without my authorization. So if you have your ball in your hand at any time, and most times you can clean it. So you have your ball in the hand and you want to know, can I clean it or not? Well, let's just say a blanket statement, you can clean your ball every time you have the ball in your hand with exceptions. So again, going back to our exceptions here, to see if it's cut or cracked, or to identify it. Those are times where you'd have the ball in your hand where you cannot clean it. And also for a ball interfering with play. So if we've got two balls on the fringe in this scenario. So my ball is further away from the hole and Caleb's ball is right in front of mine. So interfering with my play, I'm going to ask Caleb to mark that ball and remove it just for my stroke. That's a case where he's going to have to mark it because it's going right back on that same spot. But in this case, he cannot clean it. So a lot of times if you see golf on TV in this scenario, you'll see players hold the ball very carefully just between two fingers. And they usually hold it pretty far away from their body, kind of to show the cameras or show everybody, hey, I've got the ball in my hand, but I'm not cleaning it. So that's a case where you cannot clean it. And then lastly, to see if it lies in a condition where relief is allowed. So the situation here I'll give is a ball may be embedded. So if I think my ball is embedded, I call a rules official over. We can't determine whether or not it's embedded. The rules official is probably going to say, "Hey, Josh, go ahead and mark that ball and lift it so I can check out the lie and then determine whether or not it's embedded. If it is embedded, I'm allowed to take relief. If it's not, I'm going to put the ball back. So if it's not embedded, I was permitted to lift it, mark it, and lift it. I cannot clean it. I have to put it back. But now, different situation where my ball is actually embedded. The rules are going to now allow me, because now I'm outside of these four, because I'm not no longer seeing if the condition is where relief is allowed. So now I know I can take relief. So now I can clean it in that scenario. If I do clean the ball when I'm not allowed, it goes back to all of our procedural penalties. It's a one-stroke penalty. Now, if I do clean it and receive that penalty, if I do lift it when I'm not supposed to, so change the scenario here. So now, going back to Rule 9, if I accidentally walk down the fairway and kick my ball, well, I know I'm going to get a one-stroke penalty, but now I've got the ball in my hand and I'm going to have to put it back. It's not in either one of these or any one of these four scenarios. I've already kicked my ball into Rule 9. It's covered in mud. I've already got the penalty strokes. I might as well get my money's worth and go ahead and clean that ball and replace it on that spot. So now we're going to talk about dropping for a few slides. I think we're all comfortable with dropping from knee height at this point. It's been a change that's been around for a long time, but there's a few things that must be done for the ball to be dropped in, quote, the right way. So you'll hear right way drops and wrong way drops. So in order to be considered to have been dropped in the right way, the player must drop the ball. It must be dropped straight down from knee height and without touching the player or the equipment before it hits the ground. And I'll stress that phrase there, before it hits the ground. If I measure my club length and leave my club on the ground and I drop the ball before picking the club up, again, I didn't do it on purpose. It was by accident. I just happened to leave it there. And the ball strikes an area of the course in the relief area and then goes and deflects off my club. There's no penalty there. Same thing if I happen to be standing in the relief area or close by, I drop the ball in the relief area and it quickly rolls and deflects off my foot. That's still considered a right way drop if it comes to rest in the relief area, because I didn't do it on purpose and it first struck a part of the course in the relief area before hitting my club, or in this case, my foot. So that's still going to be considered a right way drop. And then the ball must be dropped in the relief area or on the line. So we'll see some scenarios where we have a relief area of either one or two club lengths next week, and also some options where we get to drop on the line, keeping the point between where the ball is, or the reference point is, between us and the hole and going backwards. That's going to be our on the line drop scenarios that Amanda will cover. So what does knee height mean? It means the knee height of the player at a standing position. So when you're dropping, it doesn't matter how you get there. It just matters that you do get there to your knee height while standing. So just imagine you're standing upright, and there's an imaginary line that just follows you around that signifies your knee height. You could be laying down, kneeling. You could be doing a handstand. It doesn't matter. If you're dropping from knee height, that's all that matters. So that imaginary line of your knee height while standing, doesn't matter how you get there. And then on the left-hand picture, the bottom text there, the player may be standing either inside or outside the relief area. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that it is dropped in the relief area and it stays in the relief area. So what to do if we drop a ball in the right way and it comes to rest outside the relief area? So I mentioned right way drops and wrong way drops. So in order to be considered a right way, we have to check all those boxes that we just went over, such as by the player, straight down, from knee height, etc. If I drop the ball from shoulder height by accident, or if it strikes my foot on the way down, that's a wrong way drop, and there's no limit to how many times I get to make that right or do it the right way. So just keep trying until you finally get it right. But in this case, we've dropped the ball in the right way. It first struck a part of the course in the relief area and it rolls outside the relief area. So what do we do now? We're going to drop the ball a second time in the right way. Hopefully it stays in the relief area then, but if it doesn't, now we're going to place the ball on the spot where the ball first struck the course on that second drop. So another little scenario where we can use the rules to our advantage. If we know that our relief area is on a slope and it's going to roll out of there every single time. So now we know eventually we're going to place the ball, right? So we're going to drop twice and then we're going to place. So you want to pick out a spot that has a very nice lie. And if you're an accurate dropper, you drop the ball on that spot two times. You know it's going to roll out both times. And now you're going to place the ball on that spot that you've already picked out. And that's completely permitted by the rules and just using it to your advantage and knowing how to drop and what's going to happen when it comes to rest outside the relief area. And then last slide of the night, when you're dropping the ball, taking relief, whether that be dropping or placing under a rule, you can substitute another ball each time. Didn't always used to be the case. Used to be some rules you could substitute, some you cannot. Now it's very simple. Anytime that you are dropping a ball or placing it under a rule, you are allowed to substitute a ball each time. So no worries there. All right, we've reached the end. Caleb, any questions on the last section?
Yes, I will answer one. Someone asked if you drop from shoulder height and then you play your ball from there, is there a penalty? The answer to that is yes, there would be a penalty. You do need to drop in the correct way. That would be a penalty there. I think that's it.
All right, well, a little preview for next week here.
Yes, so next week, Amanda Braun is going to be leading our presentation. She's going to be going over all of our free relief procedures as well as our penalty relief procedures. So you can see all those rules here listed. So if you want to go ahead and get ahead and take a look at some of those rules before next week, that would be great. And then some additional resources for everyone. We do always recommend to go to the USGA's website. They do have a lot of good and helpful resources there. They have a lot of videos. You can access all the rules virtually there. And they also have a free online course that you can access, which gives you a great kind of foundation for the rules of golf. And then another great website is the Roving Official. This is another good resource tool. They also have a lot of good quiz questions. So if you're preparing for a USGA exam or you just want good practical experience answering some questions, this was also a great tool. We look forward to seeing all of you again next week. Thanks again for tuning in tonight. We hope you got a lot of information out of this. And yeah, we look forward to seeing everyone next week. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Caleb, and thanks everyone for tuning in. And whether it's next week at noon or at 6, we hope you'll join us and share these videos to those that couldn't attend to. And I hope everybody gets a lot of benefit. So have a great evening, and we'll see you next week.